It happens a lot where I just kind of pinch myself because when you think about the great tradition of Ohio State and all the wonderful people that have come before, the 13 decades. This year is the 100th year anniversary of Ohio Stadium, and walk down the Woody Hall or the Woody Hayes athletic hallway, and you see some of the great coaches that have come before, and Woody Hayes and Earl Bruce and Jim Tressel, Urban Meyer, John Cooper. You see the great players that have come before. It just, you have to really pinch yourself because it means a lot. And we talk to our team about that. We talk about that in recruiting, is that it's our job to hold up that standard. And there's no other place that's better than Ohio State to be the head football coach. Well, I think when you look at our literally the last year, our guys have done exceptionally well. And really the way that name, image, and likeness was put into place is what our guys have done. They've made a lot of money off of their name, image, and likeness. And so when you look at Ohio State and you look at where we're positioned with the city of Columbus, the companies that are in Columbus, the brand of Ohio State football, the fan base, you can see that the potential is off the chart. And so what you try to do is figure out what's going on out there. Now, when you mix in, collectives across the country, when you mix in the one-time transfer rule, you have to do the best you can to project out what you think is right for your team. And we're going to be great advocates for our players, and we're going to be aggressive. A lot of teams are being aggressive out there. And so we're going to do the best we can to project that out. And every day it kind of changes, as the landscape's changing, but we're going to try to do the best we can to project that out.
Scott Frost said you were with Chip Kelly in New Hampshire when he called about UCLA and SC joining the Big Ten. Can you recall that story?
We were on the golf course together at his tournament, and we're on the 16th hole, and we found out about halfway through that hole that we were in the same conference together. So and we had a great laugh about that, and got quick calls from Gene Smith and Martin, and learn more about that. But we're very excited. It's exciting for both of us and both of our programs.
What did Coach Kelly think about it?
Just same thing. Just very excited. I think it's we're now part of a national conference, coast to coast, and it's big moving forward.
Your best friends, what's it going to be like competing against each other now?
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't thought about that much. I'm not going to look forward to playing against him as a good friend. So we still got a couple more years before we have to think about that.
Ryan, you mentioned the collective. Do you view them as a necessary evil? Are you happy they exist? Like, how do you? I know Ohio State has a couple, one run by Brian Shockstein, Tardale, those guys. Like what they're doing? Are you a fan of that?
I don't know if I'm a fan. I don't know. I just know that we have to adapt, and that's what you have to focus on. I don't know if there's any other sport, business where you have third parties who are, a part of what's going on, like what's going on right now in college football. It's very, very unique. I think it's strange, but, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that, I need to see a change in here or there, anywhere. I just think that we need to adapt and try to figure it out. So that's what we're going to do. I think when you look at the last 4 years, certainly my first 4 years as the head football coach at Ohio State, if you said this is what's going to happen, I just would never believed it. And so I think we've just come to the understanding that every year there's going to be a lot of change. And you can't sit there and throw your hands up and get frustrated. You have to be able to adapt. And right now, part of adapting are these collectives. Say it one more time. Well, every year we have the same expectation. And the first goal is to beat the team up north and win the rivalry game, and that didn't happen. And so, we had to sit on that for a calendar year, and that's not good. We don't want to have to go through that again. And so in the off season, we've tried to really make sure that the guys are reminded of that game, that the coaches are reminded of that game, everybody in the building's reminded of that game, but also know that we have to move forward. We can't let that game beat us twice, but it's something that we never want to have to go through again. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I just it's hard for me to think that guys can just kind of transfer whenever they want, as many times as they want. I really wish that there was some more structure in place. Again, when you think about all the other sports, all the other organizations, whether it's high school, whether it's college, whether it's professional, there really isn't any other situation where someone can just decide to leave at any point. And so I think that, again, creates a lot of hard feelings. And as we move forward, whether it's the NIL world or this transfer world, I just think there needs to be more structure involved. And whether it's at least a 2-year commitment or something along the lines. And again, that's over my pay grade. I got to worry about trying to beat Notre Dame and get my team ready. But it's certainly something that I think we got to look at and come up with a solution for. Right. I do it all over again. Yeah, I do it all over again. I just think that's the job, and I've come to accept that. But it doesn't make it easy. Doesn't mean there's not nights where you don't sleep very well because you don't know what's coming. But I think that's the part where, as you look forward, you really don't know what's coming tomorrow. You can plan for the future, but just try to do a great job with right now and just try to maximize the day and do the best you can and do what's best for the program at the time.
Defensively, can you elaborate on your comment about the goal being the top 10 defense?
Yeah.
Parallels with 2019, your first year?
I hope so. Yeah, I hope so. I think when you look at that team, every team's different, so you can't really compare. But I think what you're getting at is you had a team that was kind of had some really good young talent that got experience the year before, kind of a new style and system of defense coming in that year. You're kind of seeing those two things come together. Now we got to go put it on the field, but that the expectation of a top 10 offense every year, and the expectation of a top 10 defense. We did that year, and we had a strong team. So I think when you combine those two things, if we can build on it, then that should be our expectation every year. Say it again. I'm sorry.
What's most critical
Yeah.
at this point to having it?
Yeah, you got to stop the run. You got to stop the run, and certainly, there's a couple games last year that didn't get done, and we got to do that. So, a lot of that has to do with technique, a lot has to do with scheme, a lot has to do with toughness, and I think the scheme that's being put in place, the mentality that's being put into place, but again, also having another year of experience with some of these guys who maybe didn't play as much, the year before. They now are all coming back, whether it's second-year guys, third-year guys, or fourth-year guys. Going into last year, when you look at that Minnesota game, they didn't have a lot of game experience. Now going into this game, it's a whole new feel. I mean, the quarterback had never thrown a college pass. You look at all the guys all of our linebackers, I don't think they had one college start ever. Because you lost Pete, you lost Tuff, you lost Barron, and then you lost Justin Hilliard that were coming off of last year. So there was so many young guys going into that season, and it showed. It showed. But hopefully all of that can now pay dividends this season. Yeah. 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 And the ones that offhand is just, a bunch of guys running the ball and blowing up play in the backfield with about 10 guys jumping up and down all over each other with great energy, great passion, great confidence, talking, and that's what you want. Guys playing tough with great pad level, knocking the heck out of people. I mean, that's what defensive football, should look like. And we saw some of that this spring, and I think our defense has been edgy, and that's the way they should be.
Ryan, what did you know of Jim Knowles before last season? Because that was like a career year for him as an assistant.
I knew of him back when he was at Cornell. I followed him when he was at Duke, and then obviously watched him when I was at Oklahoma State. And this is somebody that has answers. He's been around it. As he says, he's put in his 10,000 hours, and that's good. And plus, he has some head coaching experience. He's able to run the entire defense. And that's important in our structure. The way that we have it designed right now at Ohio State is to have a head coach of the defense, and that's what he's doing. And when that thing's rolling right, we had that like in 19 we talked about. That was about as efficient as it could get. And so, I think Jim brought that to the table, and so far, so good. Yeah. Yeah, I think when you change a defense as drastically as we have, a lot of people want to see what this is going to look like, and it's not reinventing the game. So there's still a lot of things that this is what we're going to do, and I think it's pretty easy to see for recruits to see, how we're going to run it based on Jim's past and some of the guys in that room, and Perry and Tim and Larry, because a part of it is development too, not just the scheme but the development. So the recruits have been excited about that, but I also think they're excited to see what this is going to look like.
There have been a few high-profile defensive prospects in the last week or so that guys were seemingly in a good position for them to win. And I'm wondering if any part of that might be that they need to see some proof of concept from this defense player to be able to buy in to what you guys are saying.
No, I mean, I think our recruiting class is strong. I mean, we're still, the goal is always to be top 10 in the country, or top 5 in the country in recruiting class, and I think we will be this year. We'll see how it plays out. But I think our defensive guys have done a really good job recruiting. I mean, they're hustling like crazy and really working at it. But, I'm sure those guys do want to see that. But I also think that they understand that we got some really good guys. It's about development. When it's Larry Johnson up front, developing the D-line, or what Tim Walton's done in the NFL, and being a former Buckeye, he's worked with some of the best corners in the country, and Coach Eliano, what he did with the guys at Cincinnati last year. So a big part of it is that, and obviously Jim's background. But I do think guys are excited to see what this looks like, and I think when they see the energy and a bunch of guys flying around like that, it's going to be a much easier sell.
Is stability any part of that too? That it's a program that's had, I think, 4 coordinators in 5 years, and there's been multiple defensive assistants over that time too. I know you want your staff to be stable, but you project that to the recruits as well to, I guess, have that be more consistent.
Well, I think that was why it was big. We had some carryover in the last couple of years with our staff, and thought long and hard about the changes that were made, because, like you said, going into this year, are we going to make a hard change and really make a change philosophically? Because there's some things that come with that, and just decided that was the right thing to do. And I'm excited about it. I think it's the right thing to do. I think we've recruited well. I think we have a really talented defense, and that's the goal. And so it's a long way to signing day, and we'll keep battling at this thing, and keep working through the fall. But I think we'll end up signing a really good defensive class.
At linebacker, if you expect that Tommy and Steele kind of the two main guys, I think there's a lot of guys in the mix. I think you guys have like 9 scholarship linebackers. Do you expect Tommy and Steele to kind of be at the front of the list?
Yeah, I mean, they'll be right there, and Cody will be right there. We got a bunch of guys there that I think are going to fight for some time. But that's a competition going to the preseason that'll be fun to watch. Cody had the shoulder, so it'll be fun to see him kind of play. I thought Tommy really played well in the spring, and so C.J. Hicks did a nice job. Actually, Chip coming in and making the transition to linebacker was great. So, we got some guys in there, and it was good to get EA back and kind of see how he can help us. So, like you said, we do have some depth there, but who's going to take the next step as the starters, I don't think we'll know until the first couple weeks of the preseason.
What do you know about Notre Dame's history and the rich history? What are you telling players in the locker room to do?
Well, they're already preparing now. So by the time you get to that locker room, it's kind of all the hay's in the barn, and I think that's, part of the first game is just the lead up to it, and making sure that, you're preparing, but you're not overdoing it as well, because you got to go play. It's going to be an electric atmosphere. Notre Dame has unbelievable tradition, just unbelievable players and coaches that have come before. And, somebody asked me, like, who has a better tradition? One's not better than the other. It's just two different traditions, but it's exciting. I think a lot of people are very excited to see that game in the Horseshoe.
And as far as the quarterback battle that they're going through right now, how are you preparing defensively for that quarterback battle right now?
Yeah, so we're looking at both of those guys and their skill sets and trying to project out what that would look like when they're on the field, and just try to have contingency plans in place.
Could you put in some context how much time or mental energy you spend on things that aren't like directly related to football and the well-being of your players, whether it's thinking about NIL or the transfer portal or anything else? How much of time does that take up?
Probably 80 to 85% of the time. Yeah.
So, as we see college football changing, could we I know Mark Pantone, you talk about how important he is for the recruiting operation, but could we see college football teams have something more like a general manager or something where there's somebody who deals with roster structure and all the business side of things, and the football coach really coaches football and makes sure his players are okay? Could we evolve to be?
Yeah, and we actually we named Mark Pantone the general manager this year. For that very reason, to try to start to go down that road, because we do see it very much like that. We're not there right now, but it very well could be headed that way, and so we're trying to structure ourselves that way. We've hired some guys to really, specifically, their job is to study the portal and what's out there. So just like in the NFL, they have a pro scouting department and a college scouting department. We have a high school scouting department and now a college scouting department to, look at the guys who are in college and in the portal, and then the guys who are looking at the high school guys. So the personnel department has become bigger, and I do think the general manager position will take on a bigger role moving forward.
And listen, no one's feeling sorry for you guys. You're millionaires. I get it, right? You signed up for this job, as you said. But, right now, kind of, is it too much? Like, are we going to see coaches, I don't know if burnout's the right word, but just with all the things that are happening in college football, is it a lot for coaches to have to deal with?
I just think that the constant change is what's probably takes a lot of our time and thought, is because you're maybe not sure of what's going to happen next or what this means, or trying to adapt to the new rules. And so trying to figure that out. I mean, if we can somehow calm it all down and calm the change down, then that would certainly make our lives a lot easier and take a lot less of our time. But anytime something changes, there's a ripple effect, and there's a cause and effect to all that. And we try to figure out what that means and project that out and make sure that we're not falling behind. And I think as things expand, I think the staffs are going to get bigger and bigger, and it's become bigger and bigger. But until we kind of settle down on a certain set of rules and how this is going to play out, I think you're going to see the same thing moving forward. Yeah, I think it says a lot about CJ for him to make that comment on who he is as a person, because when you look at the two losses, I don't think he played that bad in those two games. I don't think CJ Stroud was the problem. But for him to say that, and for him to take on those losses, says a lot about who he is as a leader. That's the way he is, though. He is very driven. He wants it really bad. He's very competitive, but he's a very good leader. I think in the offseason he's recognized that I don't think he ever felt like he could do it on his own, but I think he maybe recognizes has a different perspective that it takes everybody, and that comes with maturity, and he's done an excellent job of that. But to say he accomplished nothing last year, that's not accurate, but that's his approach, and I think that's what makes him great, and I respect that about him. He did a lot of great things last year, but I think his best football is ahead of him. Yep. Yeah. I think right now it's only Mitchell that won't be available for preseason. Yeah. Well, I think you have to ask him. I don't want to speak for him, but anytime you're doing something for the first time, you're just not sure. I mean, I know what that's like playing the position. I also know what that's like being a head coach at Ohio State. You're doing everything for the first time, so you don't know. So that you don't really fall into a rhythm until you start to do it over and over again and get the repetition down, and then have some success, and then your personality starts to kick in. And I think that's probably what he was talking about.
Ryan, is the prep for a game like Notre Dame week 1 different than an ordinary season opener? Like, how much is that?
Yeah, no, I've thought about that. Last year when we opened up with Minnesota on the road, that was a scary game, a Thursday night road game with a very, very inexperienced team, a quarterback who's never really played and thrown a college pass before, against a team that was very, very good and knew how to run the football, in a really good environment, by the way. So preseason was tough last year, and then we had Oregon right after that. So we had to be ready to go. That's the same this year with Notre Dame. The only difference is we have a different team. So we're much more experienced this year. So there's going to be a lot of similarities, but at the same time, we also kind of know what we have. The other part of it is it's a new scheme defensively. So schematically, we want to make sure that the guys have a great understanding and are playing fast on that first Saturday night.
Ryan, what's it been like a team with you and upside Mr. Person and coached by Marcus Freeman and did? In addition to that, what are your thoughts on Freeman stepping into this role?
Got a lot of respect for Marcus as a coach, as a person, as a former Buckeye. He's hired a really good staff. He's got a really good team. And you know, when you have a new staff like that, it's a challenge because you know, you don't know exactly what they're going to do. So try to do the best you can to prepare and have plans in place.
What's it been like for 3 years now being behind Jackson and growing the player that he is?
Yeah, Jackson is a special player. He has just a unique skill of changing direction, of short area quickness, of setting up receivers or setting up DBs, ball skills. His spatial awareness is off the charts, and he's tough and he's competitive. And you know, I just think that you know, this offseason, it's been fun to watch him grow, and it's really about maturity. That's what you're seeing. You're seeing guys who are in high school, teenagers grow into men, and you know, you used to be after, you know, in the fourth year, that senior year, maybe the fifth year senior. Now it's that third year, you know, and you try to get these great players to hang on to that fourth year, but sometimes you don't get to. So you got to make the most out of them in that third year, and this has been a great offseason for Jackson.
CJ, the way that he and Jackson kind of just seem to click every time the ball goes in the air. You played the position. How hard is that to have exactly that level of chemistry?
No, they have a high level of chemistry. I think CJ may tell you sometimes he looks for Jackson maybe a little too much, but no, they do, and I think that was built maybe even when they knew each other in high school, but certainly on the scout team that first year early on, and their friendship has become stronger, and I think they're become very, very close on and off the field.
When we asked Jackson what he wants to be better at this year, he's mentioned creativity, just getting out of routes or running out. I'm not sure, but how much creativity is he allowed to have? And does he have more this year than he did in 2021?
Yeah, we've tried to come up with some different things for him and try some different things with him, and you know, he's very talented that way. You know, some guys they run routes the way that they're drawn up in the playbook, and then there's some guys who just get open, and he's that kind of guy.
Coach, earlier today, Mel Tucker compared recruiting at high school level and the transfer portal to the draft and free agency. As someone who's been there, how do you balance the high school recruiting and the portal just in the current landscape?
Well, you know, the only difference I would just say is that, you know, when you're drafting, you know, you have a draft, and when you say you picked them, they get to go to your school. You know, in college, you got to talk them into going to your school, or you got to, you know, recruit them to go to your school. So there's a lot of differences there. But I do think as we start to create more and more rules, that I think it will start to look more like that down the road.
Ryan, we look back, for example, a 2-year commitment is something before. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah, no, we haven't had long discussions about that, but I do think something like that makes a lot of sense, and just putting some guidelines in place for what that would be, because and I know there's some windows right now, but you know, I still think maybe a 2-year commitment would be healthy.
is it weird to you, though, too? I mean, since you've been there, that your quarterback room has had people come and go through it like a revolving door, but you always end up with that 1 or 2 guys. And this year, you know, from a recruiting standpoint, you can't be much stronger than that, but you have 2 guys that haven't played much. I mean, how tough is it just from that aspect of building a quarterback room?
Yeah, it's very difficult. Yeah, I laugh about that. We've been dealing with the one-time transfer rule since I got to Ohio State. You know, when you think about the guys who've come and gone, and just try to adapt. I don't know what to say. I mean, that's part of the mantra over the last 4 years. Is just try to adapt with the times and just try to communicate the best you can, bring in great people, and just do the best you can. Yeah.
Hey, Ray, is there a sense, too, that you talked about this earlier, but Josh Proctor and Lathan Ransom, is Lathan Ransom a little bit of a surprise how well he's come along, but that they'll be 100% ready to go August 4th or whatever it is?
Yeah.
What does that do for the team and the defense?
Yeah, I think well, he's going to be. he's going to kind of ease into it, but he'll be almost 100%. I mean, he's done an excellent job with his rehab. He and Stu have really got after it, and it says a lot about him. I mean, he wanted to get back on the field, and he's had a good summer, so it's going to be great to see him back out there after that was a significant injury.
Do you expect him to be in the mix on all three of those safety spots? Is he still more nickel safety?
They're looking at him a couple different things. Maybe not as much at nickel, but he does have a lot of versatility.
Ryan, when you talk about the inexperience that you all dealt with last year, I assume that you just can't coach a team the same way that you do. What's the difference when you have that level of starts or reps under the belt? What does that allow you to do that you couldn't last year?
Well, I think you can. You have a little bit of a body of work to know what to expect. When you have guys who've never done it before, in that first game when the lights go on, you're not sure what you can get some crazy play. And when you have a big game like that on the line, that's not a time to figure out what you got. So we really had to push through that last year. This year we got a little bit more of an idea of that on what to expect because guys have played in games and played in big games and played in the Rose Bowl and played in the rivalry game. So, I think. We're going to be smart about that and make sure that guys are ready to go and they're fresh in that first game, but also, calloused and tough and, got that mentality that they're going to be physical in that game.
Beyond just being able to maybe have familiarity with the playbook and the scheme and whatever, do you have to take off some of the gloves when you're going through a transition in year one for them or the growing pains, coach them harder? How did you try and manage that last year to get to this point?
Yeah, I mean, you got to just let them go. You got to push through that. You can't have a governor. You got to go. That's just the way the game's played. So, if we're gonna be tough, we got to practice tough, and that's just the way it's going to be this preseason.
Ryan, I'm curious about coaching toughness. That was obviously something that was not maybe prevalent in that Michigan game that year. Can you be conscientious about coaching toughness? I'm just curious from a philosophical standpoint.
Yeah, well, I think it's just the mentality across the board, and I think it isn't just one play of just running two people into each other and saying this is tough. I think a big part of it is your mentality, and we call it competitive stamina, of being able to play 4 quarters or being able to play a whole season. We think about the 2 games we played before. We played Purdue, and then we played top 10 team in Michigan State, and played really tough in those games. Played really physical, played really well, but then didn't. It was more inconsistent in that game, and there were times where we didn't play that way. We didn't play play with a pad level. We didn't play tough. But I think to me it's more of a not being competitive, not having the competitive stamina to finish a season, and not being consistent enough. Because every game at Ohio State matters. When you lose that second game against Oregon, I mean they're stressed to win every single game they're out, and then to play that way at the end of the game, that was disappointing, and that one hurt. So that's been a big emphasis. But the way we practice is going to be important too, and I think it was like that in the spring. But I think there was a lot of games this year we did play that way, or last year that we did play that way. But another year of experience, another year getting stronger with those guys, I think will matter.
Right, other than the games, the Purdue and Michigan State game, you really jumped on them earlier. I guess it's obvious to say that when you're up big early, it's a little easier to play on either side of the ball. But how do you get your team to the place where it can maintain the level you're talking about when you don't jump on them when it's competitive from the first whistle to the last one, it's back and forth? Like those are different kinds of game states. How do you maintain those two games?
Yeah, and that's really what happened in the Rose Bowl, and I think at halftime our guys really had a great conversation. Well, it wasn't much of a conversation at halftime, but they kind of got together and said, no, this is how we're going to play in the second half, because in those games you need leadership, because it's not going every play the way you want it to. Like you said, in the Purdue and Michigan State, just about everything we thought would go that way went that way. It was one of those days. But when it's back and forth, you got to keep swinging and you got to keep fighting. And you got to get that game to the fourth quarter and win the game in the fourth quarter and have that stamina to finish off the game, which we did. We showed in that game. And that was tremendous for our team to not play with 4 of those guys, but still find a way to win that game in a back-and-forth game like you're talking about, because we don't find ourselves in a lot of those games. So to have almost that entire team back with that experience together as a group means a lot. And it's something that's important, because in those we're going to have those games, and we got to be able to respond and play well in the second half.
Ryan, what was it?
Because, and we just go back, sorry, you think about the rivalry game. I mean, that was a 1-point game at halftime. and we just didn't play well in the second half. You know, it wasn't like we were terrible in the first half. We could have been better. We just didn't play well in that second half and finish off the game. You know, and it was obviously a lot of stuff that we wish had never happened. But I think that that's important as we go into those games. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, all good.
What was the Rose Bowl experience like for you as a head coach and the team? Can that be a launching point
Yeah.
for a guy like CJ or Jackson?
I hope so. I mean, that was the goal going into it. We talked about that heading in, and that was such a back and forth game. It was kind of a blur at times, but I think what it did is showed that in those back and forth games that, you know, we can go dig that game out in the fourth quarter. And I think because we do end up in some of these games where we get up on teams, if we're not up on teams, sometimes, you know, some of the young guys, well, how come we're not just blowing this team out? It's not that easy. This is the Big Ten Conference. These are really good teams. And so when things aren't going well and adversity hits, you know, we're not going to have long faces at halftime. Maybe if we have 100 yards or off on offense and we can't really get the ball moving, are we going to look at each other? Or are we going to say, hey, we got to come out in the second half and play well? On the other side of the ball, if we've given up a bunch of yards on defense, you know, we're going to show up in the second half, which is exactly what we did in that game. Because when things aren't going well, that's when you have to respond, and that's leadership. And that's why we spend so much time this off season on leadership, because those days are coming. I don't know when, if it's going to be the first game or the last game or somewhere in between, but when that happens, we've got to respond as a team. And been very proud of our preparation in that area. I think Mick Marotti's done an unbelievable job, and his staff this year. I'm very proud of them, and hopefully this pays dividends this fall.
Ryan, there were times third and short, fourth and short last year where you guys couldn't run the ball for first down. What have you seen from, whether it's Trey, whether it's Justin Fry, whether it's the offensive line's attitude, what have you seen that makes you think that short yardage, no problem?
Yeah, well, I think when you look at those short yardage situations, you got to make a decision. You know, how you want to get that yard. I mean, there's certain times where, you know, we did get it and we did run the ball. There's certain times where there's just going to be an extra guy in there and you got to run a guy over, or you got to decide to throw the ball. And, you know, when we decide we want to run the ball and just run a guy over because they have an extra guy in the box, we got to do that. And that's technique, and that's pad level, and that's understanding the scheme and making sure that if we're looking for certain double teams and schematically it gives us a chance to do that, we do that. But I am very impressed with some of the teaching that's going on the offensive line and making sure that when we get into short yardage situations and we get into the red zone, we're able to run the ball when we need to. Because I think that's what you're getting at. In those games, there was times where we didn't do that, and that's the balance that we need. We have to be able to do that. We have to be physical on offense.
A lot of attention right now on CJ and Jackson this year, but Travion had such a great year last year, but seemed to not really fizzle out at the end of the year, but didn't look like he was 100%. Have you seen those steps from him this offseason that make you think that you guys get to November, he's going to be just as good as he is in September?
Yeah, I mean, he had some good games down the stretch. I just think, you know, as a freshman running back, he had a heck of a season. But having a whole year under his belt now, and then having an off season under his belt, he's going to come out that much stronger. But I'm also impressed with Mayan, and I'm impressed with Evan Pryor too. So we have some depth in that room and more experience than we've ever had.
Ryan, the defensive holding, not only 10-yard penalty, but now going to be an automatic first down as well. Will that help open up the passing game even more? Guys know that they're going to have a first down if they get grabby at all?
Well, yeah, I think where that comes into play is if the ball's thrown, then it was always that way, right? Now, if the ball isn't thrown, then they can still flag you, right? Yeah, that happened to us last year. I think in the Rose Bowl, I think it was, and that happened. I think CJ scrambled, didn't throw it. It was a holding call. They threw the flag. They picked it up because he didn't throw it. So kind of a unique situation, but I think it's appropriate because, you know, you're typically not going to throw it if you see a guy held and thrown to the ground, but that's still a penalty. So I think it's a good rule.
As you see, just on both sides of the ball, the way the passing game has opened up in recent years, are DBs grabby at times? Like, is that something that when you go, you know, when you
Yeah.
guys do it too, and the opponent does it, but is that something that typically pops up? That's what they're trying to do to get guys from coming out of their routes?
Yeah, I think so. I think, you know, with the rule of illegal contact past 5 yards in the NFL, not having that in college, then you see a little bit more contact downfield for sure. Yeah, if there's confusion, post snap, then you've done a good job on defense. And whether that's the quarterback or whether that's the offensive line identifying the blitzes in a run game, that's good football. Now, if you do too much of it and you're not playing with great technique, then the minute they identify what you're doing, then you can get rocked off the ball. But the thing that I like right now is I think we're changing up the looks. We're moving. We're creating confusion for the offensive line and for the quarterback. But we're also playing with great technique and great velocity. And that's how we want to play football.
Is Jim going to coach from the field? Go ahead.
That's great. It's great. No, it's been really good. And I think the thing about Jim that's great is he sees the bigger picture. So while he's still competitive and he wants to win, it isn't like trying to win every single drill. He sees the big picture of trying to win the first game against Notre Dame. But at the same time, there's great back and forth going on. And I think that makes us better on both sides of the ball.
Is Jim going to coach from the field or from the box?
He coached from the field.
What's your philosophy on that? I know every defensive coordinator and offensive coordinator, and the head coach is a little different.
Yep.
I know Jeff Hafley loved being up in the box, calling plays from up there. Other guys want to be on the field. What's kind of your take on that?
I think you see things better from up top, but you have less of a feel for the game down below. So I think it depends on the staff, and kind of your team and those type of things. But I like to be down in the field because I just think you look people in the eye, you get a feel for what's going on in the game. You don't have as good a vantage point. You don't see the game as well. But if you have somebody up there who can see it and can give you great information, then it can be a real advantage to be down the field when you're talking to guys, you're feeling them. They're still young guys. You're putting your arm around them, you're talking to them. You're seeing their response, series after series. And sometimes that can be way more important than a schematic saying this play is better than that play. And sometimes rallying guys like when their confidence is down. It's like, hey guys, we're okay here, and here are the answers, and here are the reasons why. Because they really want answers. They don't know what's going on. They're a little confused. Whether it's defense, special teams, or offense, they want answers. And when you can look them calmly in the eye and say, this, guys, if we do this, we're going to get this fixed on the field, then go back out there and play. It's hard to do from the box.
Earlier this year, Gene Smith mentioned wanting Notre Dame to join the Big Ten, and obviously you're playing in Week 1. What would you think about them being in the conference and getting to play them more regularly?
Well, I think there's a lot going on with the conference, and I think the fact that we were able to expand to USC and UCLA made a big difference. And I know that they're looking hard at adding other teams, and Notre Dame brings a lot to the table. So I'll leave that up to those guys. That's again, I'm trying to beat Notre Dame. I'm trying to get our team ready, but I know it's exciting, and I know there's a lot of possibilities out there.
You talked about last year. You had talked about getting in the defensive behavior more once you made the switches that you did after week 2. First of all, did you enjoy doing that a little more? And then why the shift to now calling on Jim to be the head coach of the defense and Parker to be the head coach of the special teams and you to be the head coach overall?
Yeah, because I think when you get spread thin like that, it's not good. You end up becoming a jack of all trades, master of none, and the way that we're structured, it doesn't really work that well when that happens. So, certainly we'll be meeting with Jim and talking with Jim about all that. But at the end of the day, that's what we need, and that's when we're kind of operating at the high efficiency level.
Did you like it a little more than you thought you would, though? Getting
No.
those defensive behaviors?
No. I like the defensive part of it. I felt like I wasn't getting anything done. So.
Did you in spring or maybe in the summer thinking there are guys now I've got to get into my head, I've got to use, and that what comes to mind is like Evan Pryor.
Yep.
Did he show you enough experience?
Yep.
Maybe in his offenses and workouts that now I got to scheme stuff for him. And I
Yeah.
can do that
I know.
without necessarily establishing him as a true running back, or do you have to do that to him?
Well, I think it's a great point, and I think it's Evan's a great point. Mayan's one. I think our tight ends are we have some really good tight ends, but you have to do what's best to win the game, and then along the way, along the season, guys are going to get opportunities to play, and they're going to get certain things. But there are plays you want to maybe scheme for a certain player. I can promise you in that first game, we're just going to do everything we can to win the game. As time goes on and the season goes on, you can start to explore different packages and see where that takes you. But and I think that's important for our team is to understand that it isn't just about them. It's about the unit. It's about their team. It's about winning. And then if we win, everyone's going to get their share. and that's not in line maybe with the way that society works right now. But I think that's why we put so much work into the offseason to understand that part of it. You come to Ohio State for you. You come to Ohio State to be great and to chase your dreams, and then hopefully when you stay at Ohio State because of your brothers and because of the team. And it isn't about being the best individual player; it's about being the best team this season. So we do have a lot of guys we got to get the ball to, so we got to figure that part of it out, and that's a good problem to have. But the focus has to be on the team, and we'll find different ways to get guys the ball.
Ryan, here, what did you see just blossom in him over the last year?
His personality, I just see the look in his eye. I mean, he's fun to be around. He's got great energy. He's got really good leadership. Just when you see him, it's just like he looks you right in the eye and daps you up and gives you a hug. And it just, when you're one more year into the program like that veteran maturity, just the confidence level has just been off the charts. And I think he's poised to have a really good year.
Ryan, when you talked about building the top 10 defense, you did that with 2019 with Jeff Hafley, and that was year one of an install. And I'm wondering, are there points along an offseason where you points of progress you see and you're encouraged by?
Yeah, I just think over the it's hard in the summer, but I think during the spring there was just certain things you saw that were pretty good. Just levels of the install that we're in, that they were executing at a pretty high level, and you can see where it's going, and the guys are understanding it. I give our defensive players a lot of credit because they've really put a lot of extra work in. I see those guys diving in and just trying to watch as much film as possible. I mean, they're really into it, and that's a big part of it as well. So I think there'll be a point, after maybe the first or second scrimmage this preseason to kind of see where we're at. But yeah, it's going to be a process. The good news is, the NCAA allowed us to do a little bit more this summer, so our guys were able to get more time in with some of the coaches.
Were you impressed with the speed at which they installed? It sounded like they
Yeah.
played with basically in the spring.
It-
Did you expect that?
It was a lot. I thought they did a really good job, and I think a lot of it has to do with the way Jim installs it and teaches it as a unit, and then they break up. But a lot of it is same as, or they kind of tie in some different things together, and it's pretty efficient, and so it makes sense. It's a system. It's not just a bunch of defenses, and I think that's what gives him a lot of flexibility, and then allows him to adapt to what's going on in game. I think that's you were asking me about one of the things I liked about Jim. It was if somebody's beating him with a certain play, he can adapt to it and get that play stopped because he has the tools in his toolbox. And I think he's done some of that already. He's put a lot in. And he mentioned to me he was very impressed with the amount that our guys could handle, just learning, not just the athletic part of it, but just learning. And so he's got a lot in.
I don't know, have you seen that same cause and effect happen in other positions the same way as you've seen
Yeah. I think when you look at the last couple of cycles, we've done a really good job in a lot of areas, and I think hopefully that pays off this season. And look at the class we had a couple of years ago with some of the top guys in the country in all areas. With the offensive line, guard, defensive end, defensive tackle. The corners that we brought in a year ago. So I think you're seeing that in all areas. But it's year to year. Every year brings on a new set of circumstances. So the personalities change, the people change. With the transfer portal, the roster changes. And we're trying to have as much continuity as possible. And I think we're doing better than most. But for a lot of programs and somewhat for us, it's year to year to figure out what that's going to look like. But yeah, I'm very pleased with how we've recruited, and I think when it's all said and done, we get to December, we'll have a great class again this year.
Brian, we talked a lot about speak taught, or is it like leadership? You want to be taught, or you just have to bring in tough guys? How do you get there?
I think there's a lot that goes with that. I think it's a good point, but we talked to our leaders about that. I think it's the way that you practice. I think it's the way you you teach. It's the way you talk. It's the way you walk. It's the way you approach things, and you get what you emphasize. And we're going to emphasize it, and that's just the way that we're going to kind of approach things, and the way we practice, and everybody in the building's got to believe in it. And if we do that, we're going to get it done.
How tough was it
Right.
I think this goes back before the last game last year, even before Oregon. You saw it. Did you sense that there was a toughness issue, and how much did that keep you away from that?
Yeah, no, I never felt that. I mean, I felt like last year when we decided to go, I mean, we went, if you come watch our practice, I mean, there was paint flying off of helmets and just the way it was. Now, CJ did a great job of throwing the football, and we had such great wideouts that, and our protection was excellent too. So we did do a lot of that. But there was some games, we're rocking people off the ball and in the backfield and doing great. I mean, again, you look at that Michigan State game, they did a great job running against almost anybody in the country. And we got after those guys, just up front. And it's nothing against them. It's just we played well in that game. I mean, they're a really good team, and they played really tough. But then we weren't that way the next week. And I think, to me, it isn't just saying, well, you weren't tough in that game or you were tough in this game. It's the consistency level. It's having a mature enough team to know that you have to bring it every single week. When you watch that NFL, they play 17 games. One week they can look awful, and the next week they're winning the Super Bowl, which is what the Rams did. They had a stretch in there. Well, you can't do that at Ohio State. You have to bring it week in and week out. And so I just think that consistency level across the board is going to be critical. But stopping the run for sure is important. And sometimes it's the extra guy fitting the hole and making the tackle. Sometimes it's knocking guys off the ball and changing the line of scrimmage. But we certainly didn't do that in the last game. Yep. Yeah, I think when you look at Zach right now, he looks great. He's had a really good offseason. Really impressed with just the way he's gone about his business. Looks awesome. So we're expecting a big year from Zach. Tyler Friday's back off the knee injury. He's played a lot of football for us, and that's going to be great. Teron Vincent is another guy who's had a really good offseason. So these are veteran players that have to play veteran for us. Yeah. I think, Kyle has really done a good job this offseason. I think he's put a lot of work in and thrown. Every time I look out there, he's throwing with somebody. And same thing with Devin. Devin's now been here for a semester, so he's not new anymore. So having someone like Kyle with some experience going into the year is great. And then having a guy like Devin who's shown a lot of good things in his first 6 months is going to be good. So that room is going to be competitive in there. They're going to get after it, and I'm excited to kind of see what the preseason looks like. But I think every year or every kind of spring cycle you go through, preseason, the season, you get stronger, you get more of an understanding of things. And I think that's where Kyle's at. And then hopefully after this preseason for Devin, he's a little bit further along as well. Yeah, we're waiting for him an eligibility in the transfer, and so once he can get cleared eligibility-wise, then we can take the next step with him.
Is that like a similar situation to what you had with Collier last
Yeah, very similar. Yep.
If he is eligible, how will they handle that competition?
We're still figuring that out, because we're only allowed 110, so we'll have to figure out how that works numbers-wise. But the first thing we have to do is try to get him eligible, and then we'll kind of go from there.
Have you gotten any idea on when you might get a resolution?
We're hoping in the next week, but we don't know for sure.
Brian, I don't know if this was persistent all year, but in the last two games, it seemed like if you guys were under center or in the pistol, you were running the ball with little exception. Maybe one time in each machine, you read those sets of passing capabilities week. If you guys look back at those games, did you sense that tendency? Did you feel like you guys were showing your hand a little bit in that regard?
No, I don't think so. I think there's still a lot of play action off of that. If you look back on those, a lot of the out of pocket, we call them nakeds and keepers. So I think we had good versatility there. But lining back, whether it's under center or in the pistol, it really does allow you more downhill and some really good play action. And so I think we really probably didn't have a lot of drop back out of that. Which we spent a lot of time in the off season working on drop back from under center and from that pistol position. But no, it gives us some things, and so we try to move it around a little bit. But I think we have enough in place to keep teams honest.
I was
Well, lining up under center and throwing drop back pass, there's a little bit of a rhythm to it where when you're in the gun, you're already back there. So there's something about that. And then, too, like you said, tendency wise, it'll open up some things for us, we think.
Brian, you both played in the conference for quite a long time, and you coach against Jim Leonard calling plays on defense. What makes him a challenging defensive coordinator to go against?
He's excellent. His players play really hard. He's got really good answers. He kind of knows when it's time to kind of heat everybody up or when it's kind of time to back off and play some coverage. But schematically, he's very good, but his players play really hard. With challenges, I mean, just the fact that they're two really good teams, and I think that it strengthens the conference, and so I think the winner of the conference, can really be proud that there's two more really good teams in the conference. Yeah, I don't know if they've decided whether it's Tim or Perry up top. I think when we get to the in-game stuff during the preseason, we'll actually go to the stadium, and they'll probably make a final decision on that. Usually, you want a guy with his eyes on the front and a guy with his eyes on the back end, and as long as you have that, then you pretty much put together what happened each play and get good information in a game. Well, I think anytime you're confident about what you've done it before, then you're able to play with really good confidence, and you just you see things a lot better. It's like anything in life, and I think now that he's done it before, there's just that less anxiety, and he can play faster on the field. And I think when you're anticipating instead of reacting at any position, then you're playing the way you want to play, and hopefully that'll show up on the field this year. Yeah, no. Like I said, the expectation every year is the same, so we're not changing what we do. Now, with our team and what we have for our team coming off of last year and what we saw, we felt like leadership had to be the big, spend a lot of time focusing on that and really developing that, and so we did that. So that was unique. But other than that, it's just trying to, and obviously having a new defensive staff. I mean, there's just different dynamics at play, but that's about it.
When you and Mickey Roddy talk about what you kind of wanted to see maybe change a little bit,
Yeah.
what just kept coming up? Because obviously you didn't want to turn off season into punishment
Right.
for a bad season.
Accountability.
Yeah. Is that,
Yeah.
how did those conversations go? How did he kind of change something?
Well, but just because you're trying to build that player leadership and accountability that our guys have done such an excellent job of this offseason. But in order to do that, you have to have buy-in from the leaders, and we did that. We brought everybody together. We explained what a leader was. We had the guys volunteer to be a leader. They were voted to be leaders, and then from there, we had certain set of rules that the leaders had to agree on, and Mick did, and I was in the meeting, and they gave some really good feedback, and there was a lot of back and forth. And so when they went in and said, okay, here's what we're doing these first 7 weeks leading up to the spring game, it wasn't like, well, Coach Mick or the coaches are saying we have to do this. No, this is what we've all agreed on is what's best for the team. And so I think with that, there was a lot of accountability, and I think the guys really enjoyed that, having a voice. And if they didn't like something, they brought it up, and we talked about it. Not that they always got their way. It wasn't about that, but it was about saying, this is your team. And when we get to halftime of those games, your guys are the ones that are going to have to respond. And so they've really bought into that and done an excellent job. And I think because of that, they've built a lot of confidence.
2 minutes, guys.
Coach, you need to wrap up. And Matt Jones being in the guard spots. How's it going to change a little bit of the dynamic of that offensive line? I mean, what you noticed through the spring and offseason?
Well, both of those guys are built like guards, and they're a little bit more road graders inside. So we hope we can get a little bit more push inside than last year, but they're also gonna have to hold up in protection. I thought both of those guys did a really good job in protection last year. So we'll see. Those Paris and both Thayer did a really good job inside last year too. It wasn't like they didn't do a good job. But I think they were a little bit more tackle body types, and Matt and Donovan are a little bit built, a little bit lower to the ground, a little bit more of guards.
Ryan, of the new freshmen who came in this summer, have any of those guys really caught your eye yet in summer workouts?
No, because again, I hate doing that because once I point out one of them, their parents will be on the phone with me saying, "Why don't you say my son?" So I stopped doing that a while ago. But they're doing well. They're kind of coming into the program and trying to figure it all out. And I will say this: it does help for the guys who come at mid-year because they just have that whole spring under their belt, And a guy like Kai Stokes and a guy like Devin Brown or a guy. I'm trying to think of who some of the other guys are who came at mid-year. But it's like they're not freshmen anymore. They're almost like sophomores because they've been here since January, and that makes a big difference. It does. So those guys they're getting here this summer. They're working at it. They're pushing. There are a couple of guys in there that I think have a chance to help us this year, but we'll see how the preseason goes.
Folks, we got to wrap it up. I got to get them over to TV. I'm sorry. Yep.
No problem, guys.